Shalom, everyone. I couldn't decide whether or not to put up a warning sign before I showed that video, but we're going to talk about the music that it shows in just a moment. You know, I'm always worried before I do any kind of service that I'm not going to do honor to it. And then I see all of your names up here: Lanny, Troy, Felix, Lisa, guest 412. And then I feel more comfortable and my nervousness goes away. I'm so afraid I'm not going to do an adequate job for you. This isn't a happy night, and so that makes it, for me anyway, especially glad that y'all are here with me tonight. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Unlike most of our services, tonight's going to be a lot of reading, so I hope you can bear with me. I am going to make sure that everything that I'm saying is going to be up on the screen, so you won't just be listening to my voice. You'll be able to, in most cases, see me down in the corner as well as read the text on the screen. The song that was on there, you're probably quite familiar with, Ani Ma'amin, which means I believe. It's a song on the YouTube we just heard. It means I believe, and it's based on Maimonides' principles of faith that's derived. Here we go. Here's the words to it. Erica's here, and she was supposed to swat me to tell me that I didn't have the words up. These words are based on Maimonides' principles of faith, which is derived from his Mishnah Torah, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, and his commentary on the tractate Sanhedrin. So let's go through the slide. I believe with complete faith in the coming of the Messiah. I believe in the coming of the Messiah. In the coming of the Messiah, I believe in the coming of the Messiah. And even though he may tarry, nonetheless I will wait for him. And even though he may tarry, nonetheless I will wait for him. Nonetheless I will wait for him. I will wait every day for him to come. Nonetheless I will wait for him. I will wait every day for him to come. I believe. Never again, something that we hear all the time about the Holocaust. In 1953, on the 27th of Nisan, it was signed into law in Israel that this was to be a public holiday, the Holocaust Day. In Israel, entertainment places are closed, flags fly at half-mast, and the thing I found most interesting was that at 10 a.m., sirens blare, and everyone takes a moment of silence, to the point where cars in the street that are driving stop. The motorists get out of their car on many occasions and say silent prayers. In the diaspora, aka us, over on this side, we have a wide range of activities in recognition of the Holocaust. We go to synagogue, we have educational programs, community visuals, and events like this where we all get together and mull over the kinds of things that happened many, many years ago to us as Jews. And as we'll see later, it didn't just happen to Jews, it happened to all of us. As the number of survivors wane, we've been paying increasing attention to making sure that we don't forget, that we increase our activities in recognition of the Holocaust. And this has always been directed toward ensuring that we do, in fact, never forget. And before we get started here, what I'm going to do is introduce you to Isaac, who is behind me. You notice in the front we have the yahrzeit candle that we're going to be burning for 24 hours, and at the end of the service that will be lighting. But in the meantime, we have these 6 candles, and Isaac now is going to light those 6 candles for us as I'm going to continue to talk. Everyone in the room, this is Isaac. He's going to give us a hand this evening. Isaac, good.
Hello, everyone.
You can go ahead and light those 6 for us. Thank you so much. Lighting the candles, as you know, is a reminder of the Holocaust. And we have 6 candles, one for each of the 1 million of the 6 million who perished. And as I say, we've been paying increased attention, and that's pretty much across movements, if you will. The conservative, reform, and reconstructionists, all of them have some form of liturgical-related additions to their Siddurim regarding the Holocaust, which I was so pleased to see. And briefly, I'd like to thank you, Isaac. Like to share with you what it is we're going to be doing tonight. And if any of you choose to leave at any time, I just wanted to let you know that that's okay and I will not be offended. Sometimes this is a little overwhelming and sometimes it gets very difficult to listen to the same person reading over and over. Tonight we're going to start off with our service. Then we're going to light the yellow yahrzeit candle. And then we're going to listen to an anthem of the Holocaust survivors. We're going to actually look at the Shoah scroll. We're going to read it together. And we're going to then count the Omer at the end, just before we all leave. Talk a little bit about this, a little bit more about the service and what we'll be doing. Eli Wiesel and Albert Friedlander wrote a book together under the auspices of the Central Conference of American Rabbis, which you know is a reform group, called The 6 Days of Destruction, Meditations Toward Hope. And that is from, our service is going to be derived from this, almost word for word. Part of it, in fact, is in Mishkan Tefillah, the Reform Siddur. And one thing that I found very interesting in the beginning from the executive vice president of the CCAR, and so true, this should not be a book for the Jews alone. This catastrophe belongs to the world. All humanity participated in one form or another. Not only Jews were murdered, and not only Christians looked away. And in testament to that belief, not only are we going to be reading the service for Jewish communities tonight, but they also have a complete interreligious service in the same vein, but definitely not Jewish, if you will. It is truly interreligious. So they do believe that the Holocaust is something that should be recognized by everyone. And the next thing we're going to be doing, and I want to share with you that obviously I was the one who needed to make decisions about what it was that we were going to be doing tonight. And I honestly couldn't make up my mind whether to read the service or read this wonderful Shoah scroll. And since I couldn't decide, I decided to take the extra 15 minutes and go ahead and just do both. I think you'll find that the Shoah scroll, unlike the last one that I read for Esther, it's a little bit easier to grasp and understand because the language is a little bit more common than those we might read in our biblical sources. So in 2003, the Rabbinical Assembly did write the Megillah HaShoah, the Shoah scroll, and as with the other, there was a comment that I particularly enjoyed in the foreword to this scroll from the Rabbinical Assembly. The president actually said that the publication of the Megillah HaShoah marks a milestone in the transformation of Yom HaShoah into a sacred day within the cycle of the Jewish year, taking its rightful place as a day of mourning and religious commemoration. And obviously, as I said previously, as the survivors begin to wane, the fear that we may, in fact, at some time forget becomes more and more likely. So the more intently we focus on attending to what happened ensures that we will, in fact, never forget. I'd like to go ahead and begin the service here. And when we get to, except for the title that's going to show up in the beginning, whenever there's red, that is what you, in fact, if you were sitting here and I could hear you, although I can see you and my heart is with you and all of you know that, that's where you participate. And you can, if you would like to let others know that you are here and sharing as well, to just type in a letter, a word, an emoticon, anything you want to let us know that you are, in fact, saying along with us, or type in nothing, and I'm just going to presume that you're reading along. with the words in red. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start with the service from the 6 days of destruction. And I did get permission to go ahead and print this and show this in this particular format. So nobody will be sending me to jail. And I also want to encourage you, I won't be able to probably look over too much to the chat room, although Erica, if there's something critical that needs to be addressed, she will tap me on the shoulder and I will in fact attend to it. But in the meantime, as usual, one of the things that I love about all of you is that your interaction with each other. And I encourage you to talk among yourselves. And I think that that would be just wonderful. So feel free to do so. It won't be offensive to me, and I'm quite certain it won't be offensive to God. And I shouldn't speak for him, but I just feel that way. We begin with silence, the silence of death, the silence of life, the silence after destruction, the silence before creation. There are times when songs falter, when darkness fills life, when martyrdom becomes a constellation of faith against the unrelieved black of space about us. There are no words to reach beyond the edge of night, no messengers to tell the full tale. There is only silence. The silence of Job, the 6 million, the silence of memory. Let us remember them as we link our silences into the silence which becomes a prayer, which links us with the past, touching that darkness we cannot fully enter, the anguish which is memory and love, and life and death. Silence leads to memories. Memories become words. Words become images. The world of Eastern Europe rises before us, thousands upon thousands of little children learning Torah, homes in which the Sabbath candles burned, streets where walkers argued points of law and where the outside world was far away. There was poverty and lack of vision, too, but there was a depth and a greatness which we have no longer, and we weep for what is lost. And there was Western Europe, where Jewish life has flowered into a golden period of creativity. Scholars, poets, merchants, artists, and musicians joined ancient and modern visions in a joyous celebration of life. The world had a special glow, and genius resided within that Jewry. Then creation was followed by destruction. There was a Sephardic world as well, a pious culture, a quiet and enduring way of Jewish life. 1,000 years of scholarship, of family life and joy. In Athens and Salonika, in the Milah and on the isles of the Mediterranean, Jews prayed to God and trusted their neighbors, and that world also ceased. Darkness covered the Jewish world. Fire burned the books and the buildings. Night and fog swallowed up the people on their way to death. We weep for them, we yearn for them now. We reach toward them through the stories of lives by reciting names, Chava, Sarah, Ezekiel, Yehuda. Their names, their lives are intertwined with ours. They are part of our collective memories of our history. The Warsaw Ghetto alongside the walls of Jerusalem, the musicians of Auschwitz and the still harps at the waters of Babylon, the murdered temple singers and the children of Terezin. They speak to us softly, from Babi Yar and from the transports. Written in pencil on the sealed railway car. Here in this carload, I, Eve, with Abel my son. If you see my other son, Cain, son of man, tell him I. Silence, only silence, waiting for our reply. All of them waiting. 3,300,000 Jews lived in Poland before the wall, and with me say 3 million died. Two 2,850,000 Jews lived in Russia, and with me more than 1 million died. 1.5 million Jews lived in the Balkans and Slavic countries. More than 1 million died. Germany, Austria, France, and Italy had 650,000 Jews, Half of them died. Rhodes and Cyprus had happy, thriving congregations. The synagogues stand empty now. Our brothers and sisters were murdered everywhere in the days of destruction. They died in cities and towns, in villages and fields. They died in the night and the fog, and they died between dawn and dusk. They died by fire and water, by poison and gun. They died alone, but we will not forget them. And with me, as you have been doing, and thank you. They died alone, but we will not forget them. We will remember them in reverence and in silence. They fought and they died, the individuals, the communities. Far, far a city lies, body still warm. Bells are ringing. You have not seen a city thrust on its back like a horse in its blood, jerking its hooves, unable to rise. Bells are ringing. City, city, how mourn a city whose people are dead and whose dead are alive in the heart. Bells. Reports, letters to the living from those who fought in the ghettos and in the forests. Abba Kovner had led his people in the Vilna ghetto and in the partisan woods, and the fight for his people continued in the land of Israel. Others sent letters to God and brought them to him in person. Poets cried out their anguish, and the empty land shook in pain. Across the landscape, iron rails gave mute testimony of trains which had passed over it, of carriages seen by everyone and by no one. And with me, confess, O empty wagons, whence, where, confess. Now, as wagons you roll on, and see the pain. Madness reverberates, mute witnesses, you know, the needs and pain of every terror night. You know what happens. Confess, mute ones, where you roll, for it is death you serve. My people, my Jewish people, where have you taken them? And together, Will's going to say, you are not guilty, you are crammed to bursting. And then the butcher shouts, away! He sends you out into the unknown, full, and empty you return. Turn wheels, tell. As for me, tears dim my vision. Blinded by our tears, we cannot see. Blinded by our grief, we cannot believe. But beyond grief, beyond belief, gently, there is the whisper of a night song, of an affirmation which could not be slain. Ani ma'amin Abraham. Despite Treblinka, Ani ma'amin Isaac. Because of Belson, Ani ma'amin Jacob. Because and in spite of Majdanak. Dead in vain, together dead and naught, Ani ma'amin. Pray men, pray to God, against God, for God, Ani ma'amin. Whether the Messiah comes, Ani ma'amin, or is it late in coming, Ani ma'amin. Whether God is silent or weeps, Ani ma'amin for him, in spite of him, I believe in you, even against your will, even if you punish me for believing in you. Blessed are the fools who shout their faith. Blessed are the fools who go on laughing, who mock the man who mocks the Jew, who help their brothers, singing over and over and over. Our belief will lead us from the destruction to the creation. Our unbelief will guard us against complacency, against forgetting, will challenge our idolatry of little gods. No one needs again out of earth and clay. And together no one bespeaks our dust, no one. Praised art thou, no one. For your sake we want to flower unto thee. Our belief will lead us from the destruction to our creation. Our unbelief will guard us against complacency, against forgetting, will challenge our idolatry of little gods. A nothing. Were we, are we, will we remain flowering, the nothing, the no one's rose. The mystery of the Ensof, of God, who is near and who is far, who may at times be absent, is always with us. It has been said, when God's back is toward man, history is Auschwitz. Yet in every age there have been those who still reach out to God, the mothers of Israel protecting their children, the fathers pleading with God, the Rava Slobodka, the girls of the ghetto, the steadfastness of the teachers in the camps is Israel, wrestling with God in the darkness and prevailing. A liturgical meditation of our time when Leo Beck came out of the black midnight of the concentration camp. He looked about at the world and at his neighbors. Many averted their eyes. They had been silent. They had been selfish, or they had followed the multitude to do evil. In the darkness of the camps, Leo Beck had not despaired. He had fulfilled his function. He had taught and he had given comfort. And in the darkness of the new world, which had to live with the memory of Belsen and Auschwitz, Beck continued to teach and to comfort his people. They say that when Beck lifted his hands and spoke the priestly benediction, the congregation felt very close to the divine presence. May the Lord look kindly upon and be gracious to you. These words took on new meaning for the worshipers. In ancient times, the image of one Babylonian god was a clay furnace. When the fires of human sacrifice burned high, the eyes of the idol glared death upon the onlookers. To see God was to die. Biblical Israel transformed the terror into awe, and fear became love. In God's light, we saw light, but in our days, the world grew dark again. The pagan furnace roared, and Israel ascended into the sky as smoke, and we who are alive wander across a darkened landscape. Fitfully illuminated by burning idols in which some exterminate their human kin. We need our teachers, those who died for the sanctification of the divine name, and those who live to guide and comfort us. They tell us that the encounter with God can take place in the utmost darkness if we're ready for it. The blessing that's shown through Leo Beck can touch our lives. May God look upon us and give us peace. And together, return us, O God, to our task and to our people. Renew our days as of old. Bring back the time of creation. Return us to our neighbors, to those who have suffered with us, to those who still live in darkness, to those who need our help. Return us and renew us. All of life is return, and renewal is creation and destruction. Akiva walked alongside the Temple Mount and saw the jackals playing among the ruins, and he sensed a divine plan of darkness and light, of a land to be restored, of a people to be returned to God. Our survivors belong to the company of Akiva. We honor and revere them. We are their students. How can we feel what they feel? How can we know what they know? All we can do is to take their silence, and we can take their words, and interweave past and present, present and future. And we can pray and hope. And together, 6 million names come to us out of the destruction. In a world where there was no compassion, we turn to the God of compassion. They are bound up with our lives. May they be bound up in the bundle of eternal life among the holy and the pure who shine so brightly in the firmament of our lives. God, full of compassion, whose presence is over us, may the souls of our 6 million dead who have gone to their everlasting home with the holy and pure on high, who shine as the lights of heaven, find the safety and rest denied them on earth beneath the shelter of your presence. Master of the mercy, cover them in the shelter of your wings forever, and bind their souls into the gathering of life. It is the Lord who is their heritage. May they be at peace in their place of rest. It's not in red, but can we all please say amen? Creation follows destruction, and destruction follows creation. We lit 6 candles tonight to commemorate our dead. Soon these candles will flicker and die and return to darkness. Soon we begin to forget, and we must not let this happen. Let us kindle one more light, a yahrzeit candle to which we return each season, and let us recite the prayer of praise which the poet intertwined with the memory of suffering. Let us say Chodesh. And this Chodesh is so touching. And again, there's going to be a lot in red. And if you'll say this all with me, this is Chodesh Yom HaShoah. Yitgadah Lotz, V'yitgadash Gors, Shemei Rabbah Warsaw, Ve'alama Devarah Hirate, Bogdanovka. V'yamlik, I'm reading from the Hebrew here in case you're wondering why my head is down. Sorry, might be distracting. V'yamlik Malchute Ravensbrück, Bahayechon Uvyomechon Vilna, Ufaye Decho Beit Yisrael Treblinka, Be'agla Uvizman Kariv Chelmno. And let us say, Ve'emru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevarek Le'alam Ulamei Amaya. Yitbarak V'yistabak Belzek, V'yitbaad V'yitraman Buchenwald, V'yitnaseh V'yithadar Sobibor, V'yitala V'yithalal Madanek, Shemei de Kucha Brechu, Matausen, Leila, Babiyar, Minkol Birhata V'sharata, Bergen Belsen, Tushbihata V'nehemata, Dachau, De'amiram Be'alama, Auschwitz. And let us pray. Ve'emru, Amen. Yehei Shlema Rabbah Min Shemaya, V'hayim Tovim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom B'imroav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Ha'olam, V'imru, Amen. Isaac is going now to go ahead and light the yahrzeit candle for us. This is the yellow one, and I'm sure that you know why it's yellow, and that has to do with our yellow armbands and stars that marked us as Jews during the period of the Holocaust. And one thing I wanted to mention here that I'm not sure that I did while we were talking about customs and traditions, I'm trying to remember the year. It was in the late 80s, I believe. There was a men's organization that, do you have my earlier sheet, the first one? Yes, sorry about that, but I wanted to get this particularly right, particularly because I went to send for one of these candles and I was actually too late. The yellow candles from the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, they have what they call the Yellow Candle Program. The candles are absolutely beautiful, very reasonable, and what they do is they encourage everyone to buy them in bulk, and they in fact do pass them out in bulk to make sure that people do not forget the Holocaust. And I thought that that was very interesting. They are quite beautiful, they're very small, and I did send for one, but I was too late and did not get mine in bulk. But I did want to let you know about the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs. So the next thing that we're going to take a little musical, if you will, interlude, and this is very interesting music, but that I'm sure you all have probably heard. Um, so Nitkenmal, this is the anthem, if you will, often called the partisan song, the anthem of the Holocaust survivors, sung all over the world in memorial services. And in 1943, Hirsch Glick, who was an inmate of the Vilna Ghetto during World War II, he wrote the words to this. And it's in Yiddish, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with the tune. It symbolized the resistance against the Nazi persecution of the Jews. Troy, you've been to Dachau. Wow. I don't know what to say, except that that must mean that this should all be particularly meaningful to you. Sometime maybe we can have a chat and you can let me know about how you felt when you were there. I've gotten some things. My grandparents emigrated here from Russia during the pogroms, so they were never harmed in any way, but I know that they had a lot of friends who were. You've been to Buchenwald. I would love to talk to both of you about that. I can't imagine. I'd love to know what kinds of things you felt, what went through your head while you were there, knowing, being Jews and actually being there and knowing what happened in those places. Never went, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. Lanny, I love you so much. I wish you were here to hug. I need you to hug me today. I really do. This has been a hard day for me, and I have a feeling it's been hard for all of us. It's really creepy, and for me it was deja vu. As my previous life, I died there. Very interesting. Troy, last week's service, last Saturday's service, our Yizkor service, must have been really interesting for you. And again, I would like to talk with you about your views on what reincarnation, which does in fact fit within our Jewish ideology, if you will. And that shouldn't surprise me, but when I was first learning about that quite a while ago, those kinds of things did surprise me. Really creepy for me. Interesting. The next music that we're going to hear, as I said, the Zodnitkin Mall, is the anthem of the people who were resisting. And as I also said, it was written by Hirsch Glick. And what you'll be hearing is the Yiddish. It sounds a little bit harsh, but I think that you'll recognize the tune. But unfortunately, I can't recognize the words in particular from listening to it. So let's look at the words together. Want to write about my previous life. Well, you know what? I would love to actually, one of the most powerful Twilight Zone episodes was based around Dachau. Well, now I love you even more because you love the Twilight Zone. And I did not see that episode. And Troy, if you ever want an editor for your book, please let me know. I used to edit a research journal, healthcare research journal, so that would be right up my alley, even though obviously this wouldn't be scientific. I would love to see what you have to say, and I hope you would honor me by letting me actually look at a manuscript, a draft anyway. So we're going to have, here's the words. Never say that there is only death for you, though leaden skies may be concealing days of blue, because the hour we have hungered for is near. Beneath our tread the earth shall tremble. We are here. From land of palm tree to the far-off land of snow, we shall be coming with our torment and our woe. And everywhere our blood has sunk into the earth, shall our bravery, our vigor blossom forth. We'll have the morning sun to set our day aglow, and all our yesterdays shall vanish with the foe. And if the time is long before the sun appears, then let this song go like a signal through the years. This song was written with our blood and not with lead. It's not a song that birds sing overhead. It was a people among toppling barricades that sang the song of ours with pistols and grenades. So never say that there is only death for you, for leaden skies may be concealing days of blue, yet the hour we have hungered for is near. Beneath our tread the earth shall tremble. We are here. And again, this is in Yiddish.
So, geht molas, du gehst, du lässt weg. Kinderen kleine, erstellen Leute. Kommen weg noch unser ausgeweckte Show. Sven abort und unser Traut, wir sagen doch. Kommen weg noch unser ausgeweckte Show. Sven abort und unser Traut, wir sagen doch. Von grünem Palmeland, meisten Land und Schnee. Wir kommen an mit unserem Heim, mit unserer Weih. Umgefallen sie der Spitz von unser Blut. Sprotzen Wetter unser Tore, unser Mut. Umgefallen sie der Spitz von unser Blut. Sprotzen Wetter unser Tore, sprotzen Wetter unser Tore, sprotzen Wetter unser Tore, unser Mut. Ich sag, ja, Hassan, Akroschei, du Reichstag, Puta, David, Alachnu, Apalmach, in Mulal, Haradach, in Chayamat, Labithar, Kolbach, Huchadov, Nadashak, Kolbach, Huchal, Mishmar, Ishonim, David, Alachnu, Eora, Yahweh, Abishak, Puta, David, Alachnu, Apalmach.
Was interesting, wasn't it? What I'd like to ask you is, have any of you been at a service where the Shoah Scroll has been read before? I'm going to wait a minute for you to type in. And again, it is the hope of many, many Jews. Of course, Adele, that was a stupid question for you, but how about the rest of us? I've got to admit that I have never, Felix. By the way, welcome to OneShul. I'm very glad you're here today. And I had never heard it before, so I took great interest in reading it. And obviously, as I said, it's much different than the language that's obviously used in the other scrolls, which come directly from the our Tanakh. Haven't even heard of it. Thank you for letting me know that. Now I don't feel as though I'm repeating this for everybody. But, you know, as I said, I'm hoping that we can do this every year. And I would hope that you wouldn't mind that, because I think it's very meaningful. As it said, it's also very palatable. And we may get, this is not going to take more than 15 or 20 minutes. And again, I will tell you that if you wanted to leave at, nobody here, including me, will be offended. We will be running over a little bit, but actually not as much as I thought we probably would. Please welcome my friend, guest 182 from Caracas. Karina, thank you. And more than welcome here. Thank you so much for coming. Felix, thank you for bringing her and introducing her. and Adele, my cousin twice removed, working on restoring and replacing the Holocaust scrolls. So we have a very mixed group here tonight, which is always the way I like it. Oh, Felix, again, thank you. And you, I'm sure it was your pleasure. And I'm glad that both of you are here together. That's really nice. More than nice. I actually can't think of an appropriate adjective, so forgive me at the moment. I've been a little overwhelmed and emotional today, reading and rereading. So I would try not to slur my words as little as possible. So we're going to go ahead and start, and please, all of you, continue to talk among yourselves in whatever fashion you like. This is chapter 1. I know it's going to sound like a lot, but we actually have 6 chapters. But again, unlike the other scrolls, this is quite palatable in terms of being closer to what's for most of us, I'm sure, except for probably Felix and Karina. And since you're still living, I guess, out of the country, that this may not be your English may not be your native language. Chapter 1, in the beginning, so spoke the chronicler. Long is the history of the eternal people, extending for millennia, including good years and bad years, tranquil years and dreadful years. In its own land and in diaspora lands, among the nation and its free people, it enjoyed long periods of repose during which it contributed of its endowments to fellow mortals, bestowing upon them the Sabbath and faith in one God, the book of books, and the teaching of the prophets. At times, however, in darkened and difficult days, it struggled under the burdens imposed by vanquishers and subjugators. It was afflicted, body and soul, by religious wars and persecutions, burnings at the stake and being crowded into ghettos, blood libels and pogroms, expulsions and exiles, degradation and derision. The people had neither serenity nor tranquility, and the monster of Jew hatred again and again threatened to swallow it whole, rose up against it in every generation attempting to destroy it. Nevertheless, the people gritted its teeth, accepted the heavenly judgment, and, groaning, even at times stretched its neck on the sacrificial altar. Homeless and hunted, it sought a safe haven, a refuge for resting a while until the time of wrath had passed. And I'm not going to be chanting, but it is, according to Lamentations, it's the same, I'm going to refer to it as a tune. What befell the people Israel in Nazi Europe, however, is beyond classification, and what confronted its sons and daughters defies description. Untold numbers were forced out of their homes, torn from their families, trampled in the dust, worked to death. 6 million created in the divine image were strangled, cremated, shot, buried alive, and they died of starvation, of thirst, and of the cold. This time the monster stretched open its mouth beyond bounds, with a blood-curdling shriek and with stinking breath, and sought to eradicate everything. Without mercy it set out to destroy, to slaughter, and to lay waste the entire people, from those nearing the end of their days to embryos in their mothers' wombs. Countless trains stuffed with human cargo sped to the camps, where from chimneys smoke ascended to God. But the heavens were brass and the firmament iron. The click-clack of boxcar wheels blended with the barking of dogs, and the clank of iron doors merged with the stomping of hobnailed boots. Like a gigantic thundering orchestra, all of these sounds silenced the thin, small voice bursting out of the hearts of the precious few, the righteous of the world's nations who had been touched by the word of God. May God recall their deeds in their favor. So much have I seen, and so much have I yet to see, but what was revealed to me there I never could see again. All of the words in the world, created and yet to be created in every single language, will never be able to describe even a small part of what was displayed before my eyes. And this too do I know. Never will I be able to forget, and never will I have the power to understand. Chapter 2, the earth is filled with chaos and confusion. From the Journal of a Journey to Another World. I was part of a small delegation of journalists that stole into the ghetto in order to see what was happening behind its walls. I stayed there for 8 hours, during which I aged 10 years. On our way there, we stopped at a church to worship since it was Sunday. When the last notes of the organ had faded, we listened to the words of the priest. He spoke of suffering and affliction, of love and compassion, of pity and kindness, and sent us on our way with a blessing. May God be with you. But when we passed the guardhouses placed in the wall surrounding the ghetto, we were left with the suffering and the affliction, them alone. As we entered, a cart was coming toward us, pushed and pulled by 3 men. Bloated corpses were heaped upon it, their heads bouncing to a rhythm determined by muddy ruts in the road as if they were greeting us. Thus, for the first time, we met death's partner, famine. It was impossible not to feel its presence in every corner, and it was the force of endlessly propelling streams of weakened people through the streets, their faces filled with despair. Wherever you looked, terrifying sights: a dead body, its face covered by a newspaper, and a man hastily removing its overcoat while digging in its pockets with anticipation. A young girl holding tightly her infant sister who was weeping out of hunger, listlessly, maybe dying, maybe sleeping. An elder crowned with tefillin stretching out a feeble hand, his eyes reflecting the peace he had made with the most dreadful of all. A boy who had tried to smuggle potato skins into the ghetto, surrounded by a group of guards, reveling with coarse laughter as they stripped him before he was beaten to death. A group of young people was assembled around a bulletin board. One of the announcements, written in Yiddish, drew my attention. It was explained to us that this was an announcement about a concert to be held that very day, a small choir and a violinist. Other announcements told about Torah instruction and lectures on current events. Did these have the power, even if momentary, to silence gnawing hunger or to stifle the dread of what the future held? Whence did this nation draw the strength to stare into the eyes of the destroying angel? We also met with members of the Judenrat, community leaders, those unfortunates into whose hands were entrusted the lives of their brothers and sisters without the power to save them. Once again, they were forced to organize people for a transport, while the motors of the trucks already were roaring in the central square. With shoving and shouting, mothers and their children were forced, along with the elderly holding their canes, the ailing and the crippled and the feeble, into the cavernous maws of the trucks, and all their eyes were filled with nightmarish terror. On their way to the nearby train depot, the trucks left behind them a silent scream shrouded in black smoke, and the painful certain knowledge that tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, the scene would be repeated until the ghetto's last breath. The return to the city's main street with its traffic and tumult, crowds and carousing, brought me at once from one world to another. A narrow wall and a few gates separated worlds that were so different. What do the dwellers of one world know about their neighbors in the other one? And if I were to tell, would they listen? And if they were to listen, could they believe? And if they were to believe, would they not attempt to explain or to cleanse their consciences with scores of different and differing rationalizations? And if they were to ask me why all of this befell the Jews, how would I answer? Chapter 3, The Darkness Spread Over All. Written upon a scrap of paper found between 2 wooden beds. Gertrude is my name. There were many Gertrudes in our town, but in this long, cold barracks, there is no Gertrude but me. There is an Anushka here who comes from the Ukraine, a Gittel from Poland, Helen from Germany, and Grazia from Greece, and a continuing long list of those who once were women. What cruel, callous magnet drew us here from all corners of the continent and cast all of us into one mold? Wooden shoes and a dress of coarse fabric, a blanket to cover our body in a cold that knows no mercy, and a tin plate and a spoon that never could hold enough to satisfy the incessant gnawing hunger. The past is becoming blurred, replaced only by the present. Today, right now, this moment, the sewing machine, a portion of foul soup, the lineup where some of us collapse and from which others are plucked away to disappear, accompanied by shrieks and dogs and no one knows where. The present fills all of our existence. About the future no one speaks, and with difficulty I remember the past. Oh, how foolish and blind we were. We rejected the advice to abandon the homeland, to emigrate to the distant east, and we hid ourselves from the signs. No Jews allowed. Our ears were sealed from hearing the hateful speeches, for they were just words, and what can words really accomplish? With all our might, we wanted to believe that if only we would humble ourselves a short while, the storm would pass and be no more. Even after the night of burning synagogues, when the streets were covered with shattered glass, we continued hoping for the best, since nothing worse could come to pass, and after all, everyone was cultured there. Alas, for the blind fools who did not know what the future held, it was on Friday night. We were sitting in the salon, and my crippled, wheelchair-bound father, Manfred, was singing along with the choir being broadcast on the radio. Suddenly the door was broken down, and they entered. Black uniforms and shining boots. They shoved Father into an adjoining room, and they commanded us to pack a suitcase within 10 minutes. Where you are going is safe and sheltered, they said. Hurry, hurry! Later, only interrupted images and fragmented sounds. An isolated rifle shot, the vacant stares of the neighbors, the frozen city square, a mother's farewell cry, the filthy truck, the boxcar with not a breath of fresh air, the long barracks with nothing but wooden beds and the sour-faced capo. Our hair they shaved when they brought us into the barracks, and in place of the six-pointed yellow star, they burned a blue number into our arms, and from that moment, only sewing and sewing from morning to night without rest, day after day, hats, coats, shirts, and trousers appropriate for the shining boots. At first, I still asked why me, why us, why now? But I stopped asking. The question is more painful when there is no answer. Tonight they would take all of us to another location. This is what Capo told us, and she did not add another word, but her face was gloomy. I'm writing all of this on scraps of paper, and if a human being ever should find them, perhaps he will have the strength to ask for a reason. Why there was no, and I'm sorry, I don't know what happened here. Going on to chapter 4, Confronting the Abyss. The last words of Yaakov ben David ben Yotzvi Halevi. 4 times was I born, and once already have I died. My first birth was accompanied by the joyful voices of my parents and my 8 brothers and sisters when I came into the world. With the help of God, may he be blessed, 25 years ago. I was born 3 other times over the past 10 years, during which time I also died once. After that death, no death could ever frighten me. The second time I was born on the night of the selection, when they gathered us, all the males in town, to the central square. The stars had disappeared, and only the yellow patches flickered in the darkness. We were told to form a long line and strip to the waist. One by one, we passed by the light of a dim oil lamp, near a devil dressed in black, who with the wave of a hand directed to the left or to the right. At once I realized that the strong and the sturdy were being sent to one side and the young and the aged to the other. Hastily I filled my shoes with dirt to gain a few centimeters in height. Swelling my chest, I even walked on my toes as I passed by him. I was sent with the sturdy. Later we heard the shots, and I knew that my life had been given to me as a gift. Blessed be his name. The third time I was born, when 1,000 of us were taken to walk in front of soldiers on a battlefield. The area was full of mines, and we formed a living wall before the troops. Each and every day our number diminished as comrades ripped apart were left behind as food for the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field. 78 of us survived the march. I felt that our lives began anew when we finally reached the barn where we were favored with our daily portion of thin soup. Blessed be the Lord each day. The fourth time I was born, later that night, I had left the barn for the yard behind it, where I managed to catch sight of a spark from a match and the sickening smile of the one who had lit it. Since the living wall had filled its mission, it was no longer needed. The barn went up in flames, and all my comrades soared heavenward on the flaming pyre, a sacrificial offer ascending to God. May he be blessed. Whoever has been born 4 times will not die, only once. My death came to me after I had fled from the sight of the fire. I was captured by locals and forced into a boxcar on its way to the place where work makes one free. An orchestra greeted us, and all of us were led, holding soap and a towel, to wash our sweat-covered bodies. The smell of flesh on fire confused our senses. The soap seemed to be burning in our hands, and the orchestra was playing. Thanks to God's mercies for me, I was removed from the line at the last moment and did not become part of the naked mass shoved into the room so savagely. The door slammed, and with a deafening noise, and from the room burst forth sounds that no words can adequately describe. The howling hiss of gas steaming, and accompanied by a mingling of faint and feeble cries, Shema Yisrael and Mamaleh. The Lord our God, and Madre Mia, the Lord is one, and Tatalef, followed by a low murmuring sound. Here my task began, to remove the bodies, to pull out gold teeth, to shove the dead in the oven. When I pulled out the teeth of my brother Lazare, whom I had not seen for years, my heart died within me. My body continued to live, but I became one of the walking dead. The Lord gave me life, and the Lord took it away. May the name of the Lord be blessed. How the Master of the universe has taken such trouble to ensure that we would lose our faith in him. Yet in spite of his wrath and his rage, we have refused to succumb. When I die again, tear not your garments, mourn not, for there is no death after death. Do not even attempt to ask why. What have I not accomplished for myself? Let others not try to accomplish on my behalf. Chapter 5. A heavenly voice hovering cries out. Again chanted as in Lamentations, Eicha. A heavenly voice cries out, for these I do weep. And where it says congregation, by the way, I didn't highlight these because this was cut and pasted rather than typed from scratch. A heavenly voice cries out, for these I do weep, for Gertrude's parents who were torn away from each other, and all of us, for these I do weep. For Gertrude and Anushka, Gittel, Helen, and Grazia, whose vitality came to an end in labor camps, for these do I weep. For members of the Judenrat and for the Jewish Kapo who were asked to fulfill a task that no human being could fulfill, for these I do weep. For Yaakov David ben Yol Tzvi Halevi, who died twice and was born 4 times, for these do I weep. For 922 comrades who from minefield descended the heavens, for these do I weep. For the 77 who were saved, whose dust was gathered in the barn, for these do I weep. For Lazare, who in his most terrifying nightmares never saw his brother pulling gold teeth from his corpse, for these do I weep. For these do I weep, and for the millions crowded in ghettos and in detention camps, for those wandering in forests and those hidden in attics and in underground bunkers, for those who found refuge in the bosom of another faith or who lost their God, for those who were given over to experiments at the hands of wild beasts called doctors and scientists, for those who died of hunger and of thirst, smothered to death in freight trains or in gas chambers, shot, buried alive, or cremated, for those who were brought out to be killed by hanging so that they would be seen, and for those who sanctified God's name in the name of the people Israel, refusing to be subdued, fighting to the death, for those who lost their homes, their dignity, and their hope, and for those left alive to live the horror anew, day after day, moment after moment. For these do I weep, for infants who never learned to say mommy, for boys and girls whose youth was stolen from them, who withered before coming to blossom, for young men and women who never were blessed beneath the wedding canopy, for the elderly denied the privilege of a gracious old age, for the orchestras and for the music and for all the world's beauty whose rainbow of colors was lost, replaced by only brown and gray and black. For all these do I weep. I struggled so hard before the veiled curtain, before the merciful and gracious one, of great kindness and truth, how I pled and how I begged, how I wanted to understand. Was all of this known on high? Was this a decree of God who is filled with compassion? This was the reward of such a nation? But there was no sound and no response, only an exasperating silence. The Most High abides in secret. God dwells in the shadow of silence. Deep, hidden, and awesome are the events. No one understands them, not even echoes of the heavenly voice. Chapter 6, the last. Let there be light again. Again did the chronicler speak. At the edges of the night, the first rays of dawn could be discerned. They shone upon the remnants of human beings in striped clothing who stared at their surroundings with dead eyes. They have forgotten how to be happy, and their bodies reject any food offered them. Bulldozers thrust into gigantic pits thousands of thin, naked corpses that fall, one atop the other, their limbs withered. In camps of the uprooted circled human streams, searching in despair for members of their families, and they were afraid to hope lest their hope be lost. The unfortunate who tried to return to their homes found in them hostile neighbors. From time to time, and more than once, they were saved only by a miracle, from murder following murder. People who did not know or who had sought not to know, people who refused to believe or who forbade believing, stood with tearful eyes, not knowing where to direct their gaze or how to cleanse their conscience. Slowly, slowly, people returned to their homes, and family members were reunited. People married again, and children were born. Wave upon wave poured into the east, and the state of Israel arose, and centers of Jewish life flourished throughout the world. Trains traveled to resorts once again, and orchestras were making joyous music in all corners of the land. Perhaps this is the way in which heaven sought some consolation for those who suffered and mourned. The heroism of our courageous resistors was revealed and proclaimed, and mourners' Chodesh was recited for the dead. Memorial books were written, monuments were erected, so that finally mourners could find a place where they could weep for their dead. Criminals were punished, and those who were afflicted in body or soul received help. Nevertheless, it was impossible to restrain the angel of dreams, who continues to terrify the rescued night after night, impossible to silence the gnawing voice of conscience, which demands an explanation for satanic evil and for apathetic hearts. Such questions, why God, why us, why them, why now, why in that way, are left suspended in midair, hovering over all human deeds, and there is no response. Time will tell what we have learned. Only time will reveal whether we truly have listened to the voice of the blood of the slaughtered crying out from the earth. And that's the end. And I would like to say here that obviously those of you who are here tonight have learned or are willing to learn and will not forget. very grateful to all of you being here. I thought that this scroll is absolutely beautiful. I can't think of words to express. Obviously, it's, let me put myself up here so you can see it. I'm here. Very touching for those of you who have heard it before. I hope it had as much meaning for you this time as it did last time. And I appreciate everyone participating when you were along with it. And you are very most welcome. Lanny, it was tough. And I made it through without crying because I've read this a couple times today and got everything out. I'm just going to say I can't even remember what we were supposed to do for the rest of the night tonight. We do need to count the Omer. And one thing that I wanted to mention that I did mention before, can you share the digital form? I pasted this out and put it in the PowerPoint, but I will certainly do my best to either get it for you or send you a copy, but the copy comes from the organization. The Rabbinical Assembly is where it needs to be purchased from their website. It's a very small book, obviously, but it's absolutely wonderful. We are going to go ahead and count the Omer, and one thing I wanted to say that I mentioned during the Yizkor service, where it was the first day of counting the Omer, is that I don't know if you've noticed, but every night, and I'm surprised he's not here yet, that I'm going to presume that number 605 from New York is Doc, and that every single night he has been typing into the chat room the count of the Omer for us. I was so touched. So not only do we have Lanny every Kabbalat Shabbat service that we do together, but now we have Doc. So we're going to go ahead and count the Omer. Go ahead and do this in English. And since I can only do it in Hebrew, actually I need to put up the English here. Blessed are you, Lord, our King, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefrat haomer. Today is 12 days, which is 1 week and 5 days of the Omer. And I would again like to thank you all for coming. And to be perfectly honest with you, I really, you know that I'm going to say that you can volunteer and that we'd love to have your donations so that we can continue to come to you in this format, but I really don't feel like doing that tonight. So what I will do is thank you all for coming. This is my email address. I would love to hear from you. And I really mean that. And I would like to take this opportunity to say, 605, please tell me, are you Doc? Since I keep telling everybody you are. Doc, is that you, number 605? And I am going to wait a minute before I say anything else. Well, as I say, I was just going to assume, and only because I recognize the number 605 from the Yizkor service when he was with us. So if that is you, guest 605, whoever you are, guest 605, I have something very special to tell you and to thank you because you are the one who's been counting the Omer for us. And I made a donation on your behalf for the Yizkor service for you to dedicate your tzedakah for whoever you wanted to have their soul mentioned to God. That donation was for you, whoever you wanted it to be remembered for. So I thank you very much for doing that. That's one of the most lovely things I've ever seen. So as I said, not only have you been typing in the Omer for us, but we have Lanny with us every Kabbalat Shabbat. So I feel very blessed to have all of you. Troy, Felix, Angela, Adele, Visitante, and what I'm going to presume is Doc. I'd like to thank you all very, very much for coming, and I will see you hopefully on Friday. It won't be quite as somber, and it will be our usual Kabbalat Shabbat service. I hope all of you come, and I thank you so much for this evening. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here, and I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear what you thought of tonight's service, because I would like to do something similar again next year.